And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Dawg Talk Podcast. I'm Harrison Reno. Right alongside me, Dan Kiley. Dan, how's it going on this Monday evening for you?
Man, it has been a week already, and it's only Monday. It's hot outside already, which I love. I love the hot weather, but it sure does take a lot out of you when you're first getting going. So I'm excited about the show. You might have to carry me with some energy tonight. Let's have a great show.
Absolutely, guys. We got a little action-packed episode coming right at you. We got a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time. About an hour is our time limit for tonight, or not our time limit. We will go as long as we need to go. Robert, shout out to you guys. If you want to listen to more of some Georgia sport podcasts, go see the DGD podcast. Robert is in the chat with us. Thank you for joining us tonight. But let's hit it. We got some NFL draft recap. We got a little bit more, a new topic of the quote-unquote new subtitle Dan is giving it. What's Dan angry about now? And then we go into a little topic that I'm a little hot about, as our friend Brooks Austin would say, in NIL package. But let's start it off. Dan, an amazing past weekend for Georgia, the University of Georgia, and the NFL draft as a whole. 15 guys are now at the next level from Georgia, and 15 of those guys were selected through the 7-round draft, 3-day spectacle. So, Dan, I want to get your initial thoughts as I tweet out show notifications to everyone else. Dan, what were your initial thoughts on what went down over the last 3 days of the draft?
It was amazing. Every single criticism of Kirby Smart you could possibly conjure have been completely eliminated. Every single player that played football this year for UGA that entered the NFL draft got drafted. Obviously, Justin Anderson doesn't count because he wasn't eligible for the draft or whatever the case may be. But all 15 players that entered the NFL draft were drafted. And not only that, they were drafted high, early, often. All of them were gone by the end of the 6th round. So, we didn't have one that snuck in ahead of the buzzer in the 7th round. They were all gone. 5 draft picks in the 1st round, 2 in the 2nd, 2 in the 3rd, 2 in the 4th, and then 2 in the 6th. But it just blows me away. Not because they are not talented, obviously that's a given, right? The fact that they were all drafted so early just was amazing to see and so long overdue. I mean, these kids have been putting in the work and a lot of them came back for an opportunity to do something special, and they did, and they were rewarded with a high draft pick.
It was absolutely amazing to see kind of the guys, that rose up the board. I mean, Trayvon Walker, what a last month it was for him. I mean, we were talking about it last week, how at the beginning of the process, he was kind of skeptical of whether or not he should go to the draft. I mean, there's a lot of questions about whether or not he would come back for another season at UGA or he would depart and go to the NFL. I mean, when he came out, he was a mid-20s type of draft pick. That was his projection. I don't think anyone saw him going number 1 overall, mostly because of the same criticism that he gets, to this day is, hey, his sack production wasn't there. His production as a whole wasn't there. And, I mean, he's going to absolutely annihilate that. Seeing him go number 1 overall is a huge accomplishment for everything Kirby Smart and this program's building. I'm really excited to see. I mean, Georgia's now tied with 5 all-time number 1 overall draft picks. They're tied for first with, I think Auburn's one of the other programs up there at number 5, escaping me the rest of the teams. But, I mean, just some historic things. Dan, I mean, out of any of these guys, I think I know your answer. But out of any of the guys that went first over, in the first round, who surprised you most?
Well, it's Trayvon Walker because Kirby Smart's way works, right? You see all of these guys leaving school. They're not getting the quality reps that they want and need. This just proves that his way works. Stay, develop your talent. For all intents and purposes, this is the only year of Trayvon Walker's career that he ever started. So he's a 1-year starter, but he's able to put together a season that propels him to number 1. Now, a big reason for that is the numbers that he put up at the combine in his pro day and the workouts and individual stuff like that, because the tape is good, right? But if you listen to everybody else, the quality of the depth of the tape isn't necessarily there. you're basically drafting him on potential of what he's capable of, because basically he started for one season and then was able to put up the numbers or lack thereof. But he put up the good tape that he did, and it translated to the NFL. They could see that being in their defense. And the one thing that I look at is with like Aiden Hutchinson, right? And I think we touched on that a little bit last week was, if you're Jacksonville, right, do you want to be the guy who passes over a generational talent for a known quantity, or do you want to take that gamble? I mean, they're both known quantities, but at the same time, Aiden Hutchinson is a much more finished product, but Trayvon has the upside. But out of that, and then Devonta Wyatt, we liked Devonta Wyatt as Georgia fans, as a Georgia group. We really liked what we saw from Devonta Wyatt. I don't know that Devonta Wyatt got the love nationally that we give him here locally. So to see him go as high as he did in the first round means there was a lot of good tape and a lot of people paid notice. And if you listen to what a lot of the NFL coaches and scouts said following the draft, is that they don't feel it risky to take a Georgia player because they know the preparation and the quality coaching that they're getting at the collegiate level is going to allow them to perform day one. So, Trayvon Walker is the biggest surprise because of the lack of tape and the lack of starting that he had. And he's not a known quantity to a lot of different people. But then Devonta Wyatt for me also, because I didn't know that he had the national love that he was obviously shown this weekend.
I didn't think Quay Walker was going to get the love that he was shown this weekend. I mean, taking him 22. I mean, we heard rumors going in. I think we mentioned it last week. There was rumors going around pretty late into last week, right before the draft, that the New England Patriots were really interested in Quay Walker. And I think I saw it on Instagram. They're saying, Quay Walker won't fall past the Patriots at whatever they were picking at. And I didn't expect the Packers to take a linebacker round one. So that was interesting in itself. I thought, the whole time to me was, one of those picks is going to be a receiver for the Green Bay Packers. But in true Green Bay fashion, whatever Aaron Rodgers wants, he does not get. So, not surprising at all. I mean, the Packers have made history, NFL draft history, for being the first team to select two players from the same defense. Absolutely amazing. I mean, that in itself is awesome. And then you go back and you look, hey, Georgia's the first school of all time to have 5 players on defense to be selected first in the first round. And it easily could have been 6 if Jermaine Johnson didn't transfer to Florida State. I mean, obviously, I don't know if he would have went first round if he stayed at Georgia. But, for the guys that say, Georgia wasn't developing at a high rate, they weren't developing like, Dan Mullen was at the time. I think that was a big knock on Kirby was, Dan Mullen's developing these 3 stars. What is Kirby Smart doing? Well, I mean, he's sending guys into the league. Jordan Davis was a 3-star. Quay Walker, what, a 4-star, 5-star? I can't remember exactly. I remember the half flip to Tennessee. But, I mean, Lewis Cine wasn't even projected to be a first-round draft pick coming out of school. This guy was what, a day 2, day 3 guy?
Not anymore. He's not.
I mean, it's just the whole Kirby doesn't develop narrative is gone. I mean, that's gone, like saying, he won't win big games. I mean, he showed you beating OU in the first, in the Rose Bowl on his first playoff appearance. Gone. Or whether it's a fluke or not, that's gone. I mean, he absolutely crushed Michigan, this go round and ended up culminating in a national championship win. So, I think Quay Walker, I agree with you. Devonta Wyatt, big surprise. For me, grand scheme of things, Trayvon's, I mean, that's huge. I mean, you go back a year ago and tell me Trayvon Walker's the number 1 pick. Huge.
Well, and then if you also look at somebody like Jordan Davis, now we all love Jordan Davis. And a lot of times as fans, we are victim of having selective memories. Okay. If you remember when Jordan Davis first got to Georgia, the biggest issue was his weight, right? He wasn't on the field all the time. They couldn't keep him healthy and, weight wise and keep him on the field and keep him productive. There was a lot of tough love shown there with Jordan Davis over the years. And I think it ultimately has created the opportunity for him to be an elite player for a long time at the NFL level. Now, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that everything that he was taught and everything that he's all the changes that he's made to his lifestyle are, continuous at the NFL level, because he has an opportunity to be a real animal for the Eagles, especially playing next to a guy named Fletcher, playing next to a guy like Fletcher Cox. Hopefully Fletcher Cox takes him under his wing, teaches him the tricks of the trade, and he's able to to catapult that into just a Hall of Fame NFL career. That's what we would all love to see. But the Kirby doesn't develop thing, right? That's Jordan Davis is a prime example of that, because he was not a finished product when he showed up. Hell, we had a hard time getting him on the field. He just couldn't make weight, and Kirby just wasn't going to play him. There were plenty of times he just didn't play. But again, selective memory, we only remember the Jordan Davis that we know right now. But go back and look. He didn't play that much because he wasn't buying into what Kirby wanted, but he eventually did, and he was able to go up into the first round, high in the first round, second Georgia player taken. But if you look at every single criticism laid at Kirby Smart's feet, to your point, they've all been eliminated, right? Can't develop, that's gone. Can't beat Alabama, that's gone. Can't win the big game, that's gone. Can't win the national championship, that's gone. I mean, I really don't. I guess the only thing left is he can't develop a quarterback. I mean, I guess if that's still out there, it's hard to argue. I mean, he's got Stetson. Did he develop Stetson? I mean, who knows? Who cares? He can't develop a 5-star quarterback. Like, if you're a 5-star quarterback, you don't want to go to Georgia because Kirby's just going to play a walk-on, right? So I guess that narrative's still out there, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's still out there, okay? But everything else, he's kicked that to the curb. And if you're a University of Georgia fan, this weekend was just icing on the cake for everything, right? But I heard something on the radio today, and it rang true, and I just want to repeat it. It was on the Chuck and Chernoff show. I just want to repeat it because it resonated with me. Was the last 9 minutes of the national championship game changed everything, because these guys more than likely would have got drafted all in the first round and all that stuff. But then, so what? What does it matter? You don't have a national title, right? So that final 9 minutes of that game changed everything. And, it remains to be seen, but I really feel like it broke that seal, and we're about to see an unprecedented run at the University of Georgia. And that's awesome that we had 15 guys drafted this year. It really is awesome, but I wouldn't be surprised if we had another 10 or 12 next year. And, oh, that's crazy talk. Is it though? Look at the guys on the roster. We have a lot of guys that are going to be rolling over into the draft. And not to mention, we might pick up a guy in the transfer portal. Who knows? But I was just extremely happy for all of these guys.
I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, this may not be a one-time thing. Georgia could send out multiple first-round picks. I mean, I've already seen mock drafts, top 10, that have top 10 mock drafts with the top 10 picks next year. Keely Ringo mentioned in it, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith was ranked in it, which kind of shocked me. I wasn't sure what everyone thought of Nolan Smith. Like, where do you rate him? Because, I mean, when you go back and watch Brooks Austin's film studies on the guy, there's a lot of questions about whether or not he can be successful with his God-given traits. I think, one of those questions being, how is he going to deal with, the length disadvantage that he has going up against these bigger offensive tackles? And, personally going back and watching him against Evan Neal and the Alabama offensive tackles, that is a big question that he has to get answered. And he showed consistency of rushing the passer in one way, kind of not trying to use his length to get off, to beat these guys. Instead, using what God's given him to beat these guys, and trying to find a way where he doesn't have to get, have to use a long arm like Trayvon Walker, but replicating his own formula of success to his own right. So kind of interesting to see what Georgia could all put out next year. Robert Beal could put himself in the conversation. We're going to see very, very quickly what Georgia has next year. I mean, I even saw a stat on Twitter that's really interesting. I think it was John Tweet Sports. Y'all can go give him a follow on Twitter as I look into my benchmarks. Georgia has, I think the tweet was off the top of my memory, Georgia has, I think they have 11 guys coming back this year on that defense that have taken over 150 snaps. I'm trying to look for it now. I believe it's over 11 that have taken 150 snaps. Last year, I think it was about 8 or 9.
8. It was 8. I saw the tweet. Yeah, it was. We have more experience coming back this year than we did last year. That's mind blowing.
I mean, where does that put you? I mean, your perception of this defense. What are the expectations? I know this is going a little off topic, but I mean, you lose 15 guys, 5 first-round draft picks. What are the expectations? I mean, everyone's talking about a huge drop-off, kind of acting like it's, 2020, the year following 2019 LSU offense. Are we talking about that much of a drop-off? Is Georgia just going to fall off the face of the earth defensively? I mean, or is it somewhere in the middle?
No, it's not that at all. And if it is, I would be ultimately shocked. I think Kirby Smart would be shocked. I think Kirby Smart would be pissed if there was a drop off like that, because the difference is Georgia hasn't had a number 1 recruiting class and then a 13 and then a 2 and then a 22. Okay. It's been top 5. I mean, basically top 3 every single year that Kirby's been. Well, I don't remember what the first class was, but it was definitely top 10, right? Kirby's first class, it was top 10.
His that transition class was 6, and then that first
6?
class
Okay.
was top 3.
Right. So he's been stacking top classes on top of top classes. So there really shouldn't be that much of a drop off. In Kirby's mind, there shouldn't be a drop off at all, because all of these other guys have been getting opportunities, and Kirby's done a great job. One of the things that gets overlooked and criticized by some, but overlooked by others, is that he rotates a lot on that defense. And part of it is to keep him healthy. Part of it is to keep him fresh. But the other is that you're constantly developing talent by doing that, giving these guys these opportunities. Now, the secondary, and I know other guys have pointed this out before as well, is the secondary, he doesn't rotate that much. Okay. It's pretty much, it is what it is. Maybe one guy might work through, whatever the case may be. But up front, and then middle linebacker, I don't believe Nakobe Dean rotated with anybody. I may be wrong, but somebody will definitely correct me if I'm wrong. But for the most part, everybody rotates on that defense and is constantly getting these guys real game opportunities. And it's not like they only rotate against Chattanooga. Okay. They rotate in every game. So these guys are ready to go. And then the guys who have stayed and put in that work, and they are ready to play, and they want to play, and they want their opportunity. They want to be the first round draft pick, right? The earliest mock draft I saw, I believe it was Mel Kiper, or somebody like that. He's got Jalen Carter going number 3 overall next year to the Jets. I mean, if it is what it is, and Will Anderson going number 2 to the Falcons. So obviously, the Falcons passing up another Georgia guy. But hey, listen, I'll be the first one to tell you if the Falcons were to pick somebody like Anderson, Will Anderson, that's. I mean, you can't pass that. That guy's an animal, right? I think even Georgia fans, we can agree that Anderson is an absolute beast and a stud and generational type of guy. So I'll give credit where credit is due. But a lot of these guys are getting high grades for next year. And then the other part of that too is, like, think about Trayvon Walker. There's a guy who is going to come out of nowhere to be a top 10 pick for this Georgia football team. I firmly believe that. Keely Ringo has an opportunity to come out. He has an opportunity to put some really good tape together. The guy was one of the highest rated cornerbacks to ever come out of high school. And last year was his first full year starting. And we saw a pretty damn good football player. Do I think he was a perfect player? No, absolutely not. But do I think he's one of the best in the country? I really do. And I think he's only going to get better with that secondary tandem that they have. Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart, all those guys that coach the secondary. I'm telling you, Keely Ringo is going to be high. He's going to go high. And I think he's going to test extremely well. And he's a big corner too. So, hey, you know what? The Falcons might take him because they love big players. But all these guys that went, like Channing Tindall, right? Channing Tindall had flash plays for us. I mean, we know more about him than other people because we see so much of him, right? A lot of these guys, they had flash plays, and we wouldn't necessarily say they were absolute dominant players while they were at University of Georgia. They had moments, but it's good enough to get them drafted. So that's a long-winded answer to say that I don't think it's going to be a dramatic fall-off. I really don't think there's going to be a fall-off. I mean, you would have to say that we're probably not going to hold people under 10 points a game again. That's high cotton. But
when Tennessee's your highest scoring team at 17 points in the regular season, I mean,
you know what the funny thing is? Brooks called that before the season started, and he said that the way that they can score points, Georgia's going to play them extremely well, and they're going to kick their ass, but Tennessee's going to score points, and they sure did.
I mean, in that game, going back and watching, it's just, it's crazy. Tennessee gets out, scores first. doesn't do it with much challenge from the Georgia defense. I mean, yeah, Georgia made some things difficult, but then again, I think Tennessee came out with a really good game plan and played fast, and I think kind of hit Georgia in the mouth for a little bit, and you got to see what Georgia was made of, and the response. Not to mention, apparently a bunch of guys had the flu, but I think kind of going off Dan's point, talking about Kelee Ringo for a minute. I mean, this guy's going to be an essential player in that Georgia secondary, almost a linchpin. I don't think Kelee Ringo is going to come off the field unless you're up 30, 40 points, late in the game. I mean, he's going to be taking all the snaps possible on whatever side of the field they want him to. You go back and watch Darian Kendrick and Kelee Ringo, for the better part of the last half of that season, those guys barely left the field. After Ringo kind of earned his starting job over Amir Speed, Ringo barely left the field, kind of like Darian Kendrick. So, going back and looking at what Kirby Smart has done in the second year of a starting defensive back, you go back and look at Eric Stokes and see what jump he made from that first year he started to the second year. I mean, it ended up helping get Eric Stokes drafted. It got him on the radar. I mean, Tyson Campbell. You remember Tyson Campbell as a true freshman?
Yeah, I do.
And then you go back and watch him his sophomore year. I mean, just a tremendous jump. I mean, Tyson Campbell was the guy that basically gave Eric Stokes an opportunity in that defense. Campbell's struggling. I think he ended up getting hurt a little bit right there. And then Stokes came on and kind of locked down the field next to DeAndre Baker. So, I mean, even looking at what Kirby Smart did in the lead up to that Texas Sugar Bowl, where he had a whole month to work with Tyson Campbell. I mean, the improvement, I didn't think, Campbell's going to be as good as he was in that game against Texas. I mean, the whole secondary was really good against Texas. If you have Jordan Davis in the middle of that defense, you may be talking about a different game and how that turns out. But I think, we're going to see a tremendous jump from Kelee Ringo in the second year. Not to mention, I mean, what is Christopher Smith going to do over top? I mean, Georgia likes to get really complicated, real complex with these safeties. And I haven't seen one yet that hasn't been able to, perform at that level that is expected of them.
Well, Tyson Campbell is a really good example. Tyson Campbell was the number 2 rated corner in the country coming out of high school, and Patrick Surtain Jr. or second or third, whatever the hell his name is. But Patrick Surtain was number 1. They both went, I believe it was American Heritage. They went to the same high school together, which is freaking incredible if you think about that. The number 1 and number 2 corner of the country at the same damn school. That is insane. But Tyson Campbell, when he came into University of Georgia, he had athleticism off the charts. I mean, the guy was incredibly athletic, long. I was enamored. Yeah, I was enamored with his talent, but he didn't have the ball skills and the just the overall skill set. Well, he had the skill set. He just didn't have that refined ability to play in a very structured defense like Georgia likes to play. Like, I'm sure if you just turn him loose and, like, I don't know, like at Ole Miss or something like that, he would have been 100% fine, right? But he couldn't necessarily grasp onto what we wanted to do. But then all the coaching that he was able to absorb and take, and then couple that with his freaky athleticism, ends up getting drafted. I have no idea what he's doing now. I'm sure he's got to be in the NFL still, right? I don't even know where he got drafted. But
he was, I think it was second round to the Jaguars. I think it was one of the first few picks in the second round of the Jaguars.
So I didn't follow any of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I have no idea how well he's doing in the NFL. But Kelee Ringo is a great example. Like, he was dinged up, right? And he wasn't able to play his first year or whatever. And then, last year you could see that while he was injured, he was able to absorb all that coaching and he put it together with his overall athleticism. So, I have extremely high hopes for Kelee Ringo. I think this year is going to be a clinic on how to play corner.
And before we wrap it up, kind of taking it back to the draft real quick before we move on. I mean, we can't go past the show we can't go past this segment without talking about what happened to Kobe Dean. I mean, first off, ain't no way anyone can tell me that dude's a fourth round pick. There is no way in hell you can tell me Kobe Dean played like a fourth round pick. I mean, third round. I mean, yeah, there's no way. I mean, in my opinion, that dude's a first round pick. I don't care what his size is. I don't care what his speed is. You go watch the tape. Go turn on the tape. Dude is making plays like he's running a 4.5 or whatever speed you want. Dude's chasing down running backs, going out on wheel routes with Florida running backs. I mean, you go turn on the tape last year against Florida when the wheel route absolutely demolished Georgia's defense, and go turn it on this year. Go watch him in man coverage. Go see all his man coverage reps. That dude is fast. That dude has what it takes to be a middle linebacker in the NFL. But somehow he falls into the third round.
I think it's an absolute shame. And then he himself came out and said that he was never advised to have surgery. He was never told that he had an injury that required surgery, so he doesn't know where it's coming from. And he's not lying, because who shows up to the first round of the NFL draft dressed like a Don, like a straight up pimp? Dude, that outfit was banging, right? So you could tell he had no idea this was coming. He wasn't told by anybody. So maybe that's the fault of his representation. I'm not 100% sure on that. But if you look at the way he showed up for the draft, he swears up and down that nobody ever told him he had to have surgery. Now we hear that he's got a torn pec muscle. Well, if he had a torn pec muscle, don't you think he would know that? Right. Mm-hmm. So we hear he's got bad ankles, a bad hip, shoulder issues. Basically, he's the walking wounded and should never, ever play a football game ever again. But yet the guy was able to answer the bell every single Saturday in Athens and play like an absolute beast. So there's a disconnect there somewhere. Either they're 100% right and my man is about to fall apart like the straw man.
Not gonna be able to see the field.
Oh, God. I mean, the guy is literally the walking wounded and may never play a down of football ever in his life. Either that's the case or there's a bunch of idiots who are listening to just morons. And then the other thing that drives me crazy is that on the NFL, I don't remember if it's NFL Network or ESPN, but they went through and they highlighted a lot of his tape where the defensive line was eating up blocks and allowing him to run. But then if the defensive line didn't, then he got washed up in trash. Even if the defensive line took it, he got caught up in trash. And they were talking about how he's not instinctual. And I'm just like, that is contrary to everything that we know about him, everything we've seen about him, every single film breakdown that we've watched that Brooks does a great job on. And I've always told you, if you want to see film breakdown, go to Brooks. He does a great job. If you watch the film, the guy is reacting before anybody else reacts. He's moving to the ball in the right direction more times than not. He's very rarely, if ever, fooled on misdirection. The guy is one of the most. Kirby Smart even said, as when he was a freshman after the first spring, he said he's one of the most instinctual players he's ever met. I don't know where the disconnect is. I don't understand it. Like, again, either he is a walking medical case that should never, ever play football again, or there are a bunch of people who are trying to be smarter than the room. I don't know what the case is. I hope it's egg on everybody's face. And Nakobe Dean goes, because they're like, oh, he's not going to even play his first year. He'll have to get all these surgeries once the NFL doctors get a hold of him. I mean, that's insane. I just feel like if that was true, he would have handled it, right? I mean, that's what these guys do. But maybe I don't know. Maybe they know better than we do. I just, I listen. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. But I have a good friend, coach one of his kids that is a former Falcon, still has a lot of connections to it. And Nakobe Dean was not on their board.
What?
Not on their board. So,
I mean,
they
when
said
he
it was
fell to the Eagles. I was done. Absolutely done. I couldn't watch anymore.
I don't know. I was just, you know what? The thing about it is we weren't the only ones that were shocked. I mean, even the blowhards on ESPN that hate everybody from Georgia, they were even like Booger McFarland was like, wow, like, okay. Like, I mean, I understood that not the first round part, but like not in the second round, not in the top half of the third. I mean, even he was a little bit shocked. So I think he caught everybody off guard. But I mean, apparently there were a bunch of teams, and Mel Kiper said that there were teams that don't have him on their board at all. One, because of his size, and two, because of his medical, which just blows my mind.
Before we transition, I'm just going to put it out in the universe, and then you take it away. You take the wheel. I'm going to put it out there in the universe. Everyone, if you're going to clip it. Nakobe Dean's going to win NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Book it. Dan, show is yours.
All right, so this segment is what is Dan angry about now? And had we filmed this on Thursday and Friday, it would have been a much better segment because Dan was flipping out and so angry. Now, listen, I didn't have to break anything because we didn't take a quarterback at 8. I was upset that we took Drake London, number 8, because the guy had a hard time creating separation, in college, and you think that's going to get better in the NFL. But as I've had an opportunity to calm down and read some evaluations, one of the things that they liked about him was size. One of the things that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith value over everything else is size. They prefer size. They don't want to draft smaller players. So if you look at their draft board when it's in its totality, in every single area, they drafted the biggest guy. Now, who knows if that's going to pay off long run? Why am I angry about the draft process of the Atlanta Falcons? Okay, it started with Thomas Dimitroff. Thomas Dimitroff had a really bad habit of trying to act like he was the smartest damn guy in the room. He wanted to take flyers on guys from small schools over known quantities and guys who were playing at bigger schools. Now, does that mean that there's no opportunity for a guy from a smaller school to be very successful in the NFL? No, it does not mean that. Okay. Khalil Mack was drafted, I want to say top 5, maybe top 6. I'm not really sure where he was drafted, out of Buffalo. But everybody knew the entire year that he was going to be a top 10 draft pick. He didn't come out of nowhere. He wasn't a combine superhero. Even during the season, for fans who didn't get a chance to see him, we heard about his name. We understood who he was. Khalil Mack was a known quantity, although he may not have been at a major school, right? He was a known quantity. Everybody understood who he was, okay? So my issue with the Falcons started with Thomas Dimitroff. He drafted all of these guys from smaller schools, and they did not pan out. They did not work. And he wasted any goodwill that we had, right? So now Terry Fontenot comes in, and he has a difficult job to do. He has to completely rebuild the roster. I will give him the benefit of the doubt in that regard, where basically you can take anybody you want to because it's got to be better than what we already have because they have a terrible football roster. But they took a guy, what was his name, Richie Grant. They took Grant in the second round last year. Crap. I lost.
If I remember correctly, that is correct.
Yeah. So they took Richie Grant at the pick number 8 of the second round last year. Dude didn't see the field. I mean, he got like a couple plays here and there. They took him out of UCF. Now UCF is not a weenie school or anything like that, but you had a safety who went 2 picks later who was on the all defensive rookie team. All right. And he went to a bigger school. So my issue with that is it always seems like they're trying to hit the home run with somebody that nobody knows. And I don't mean to crap on the dude from Montana State. I've had an opportunity to watch some of his tape now that he's been drafted and hear some of the NFL experts. And he threw for like 2,500 yards, ran for 1,400 yards as a quarterback, switched over. He's like a 2-time or 3-time state defending high school champion in the 100 meters and the hurdles. And he ran track in college. He's the absolute fastest player in the draft that plays defensive linebacker or whatever. The guy's incredible athlete, all that stuff, right? But my issue is that you are coming from a school like Montana State, okay, where you're playing against nobody. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I went to a Division II school to play football, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying those guys are not the talent of the guys in the SEC. So when you have these top-level guys, ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, stuff like that, you're playing against guys that look much more similar to NFL players than you do at Montana State. And I'm not saying that this guy's not going to be great, but on paper, I just get so frustrated because they always pass up known quantities for these gambles. Now, listen, the defensive end, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce his name, that they got out of Penn State, that was a great pick. I'm not crapping on that pick. He was probably the best available pass rusher at that spot. I understand it. That's a great pick. I don't mind them giving up a 4th-round pick to go up and get that guy. Drake London at number 8. They said that they wanted a big wide receiver, to pair up with Pitts or whatever. But like Olave, Wilson, those guys got much better grades. And the scouts think much more of them. He was the 4th best wide receiver, and we take him at 8. Why couldn't we move back to get him? I don't understand why we needed assets. I don't understand why you take him at 8. Thank God they didn't take a freaking quarterback at 8, because I was going to break everything in my house. And then, it just drives me crazy because, like last year, like Jalen Mayfield, they got out of Michigan. He sucks. Darren Hall plays corner from San Diego State. Did he do anything? Drew Dahlman. Who's Drew Dahlman? I don't know. Maybe he's going to play center this year. I know Matt Ryan MF'd him up and down sidelines last year because he couldn't freaking shotgun snap. Traquan Graham, defensive tackle from last year. Did he do anything? I don't know. Avery Williams, I don't remember him doing a darn thing. Frank Darby didn't even make our freaking roster. So, that was last year's draft. What did they do this year? This year they take Drake London. Okay, maybe he'll be good. Who knows? I felt like we could get some more assets to move back. I love the pick out of Penn State. Thought it was a good pick. Troy Anderson. I heard NFL scout today say that he's going to be the leading tackle for the Falcons, and he's going to be like Keith Brookings, except really fast. So maybe he is. Desmond Ridder. I don't mind taking a chance on a quarterback in the 3rd round. That's not terrible. D'Angelo Malone, Western Kentucky. There were other known quantities, but I did get to see some of that stuff, his tape, and the guy looks like he might be able to get it done. So I'll give him a pass on Drew Malone. He might be the Alligar running back from BYU, whatever. I don't know. And then they take Justin Schaefer over Jamari Sawyer, but they wanted the bigger guy. So Schaefer's bigger. So that's just, what it is. We all know that Sawyer was better. Like, how many times did we say if there was a way to replace Justin Schaefer, we would, right? And then Fitzpatrick, I think Fitzpatrick makes a damn team because they need a blocking tight end, the guy who can block. So, I was so frustrated during the draft. I've calmed down because I understand that most of my frustration is not necessarily because of Fontenot. It's because of Thomas Dimitroff and all the damn whiffs he had from these small ass schools. And I'm just so sick and tired of them gambling on these guys when there's a known quantity. But like I said, I've calmed down. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Vegas has Drake London as odds-on favorite to be Rookie of the Year. So, maybe they know something that we don't. And, at the end of the day, they do put in a lot of time, effort, and scouting. And it's pretty freaking arrogant of me to act like I know more about everything. It just gets really, really frustrating when you see them passing on known quantities for guys you've never heard of. And I think that's the biggest issue for most fans is we've never heard of these guys. Like with Khalil Mack, like I pointed out at the very beginning of this, everybody knew who he was. Yes, he went to a small school, but everybody knew he was going to be a playmaker. So that's my rant. I'm not as angry as I would have been.
You bring up I really like the 2nd round pick y'all made. The Arnold, I'm not going to butcher his name. The guy's name is Arnold. Really good pick. The big knock on him, the only reason, in my opinion, that he wasn't a 2nd round pick after doing some research on him and actually watching him was that he's undersized. His build isn't the typical outside linebacker / edge rusher build at the NFL level. That's the only thing that I think kept him out of going in the 1st round and being in, the mentions of a Jermaine Johnson type, that level of edge rusher. I think that's one of the big things. And plus, edge rusher was stacked. Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, Jermaine Johnson. It was going to be, even Jermaine Johnson fell into the 20s. It was going to be hard to slide into that 1st round as an edge rusher. But I think, like Dan said, he was best available. He's a really good speed rusher. He has really good hands. Powerful hands. He knows how to hand fight. He knows how to get the quarterback. The only question with him is, you're going to have to work on, his ability to stop the run, hold the edge against these offensive tackles in the NFL. So, really great pick. Like Dan says, as a non-Falcon fan, giving up a 4th round pick, you could do a lot worse than giving up a 4th round pick for the guy. I think that's going to be the one guy that stands out among the rest from this draft class. It's not too far-fetched, in my opinion, that Drake London is the Offensive Rookie of the Year. That wouldn't shock me one bit because, it all depends on, what type of offense you're going to have and how much time Mariota's going to have in the pocket. So props off to the Falcons on not drafting quarterback because it would have been a very interesting episode, to say the least, if they took one of the quarterbacks whom they had plenty of opportunities.
I would have broken stuff. It's the other thing that irked me a little bit was the Tyler Algier, the running back from BYU, is just like he's almost like a fullback to me. Like he's a big, powerful guy, whatever, but he's not fast at all. I think in the 5th round, I would have taken a flyer on Zamir White. I mean, you have to understand, Zamir White was the highest rated running back in the history of high school football. There's not been a running back that's higher rated than him coming out of high school. He had 2 devastating knee injuries. I really felt like we had an opportunity this year, and maybe it's biased because we're here, right? But we really got to see him get healthy and put together a really good season for us. Now, he did share some time or whatever, which is good, right? Because it keeps that tread on the tire, so to speak. But the guy didn't have a single negative rushing yard all season. I mean, extremely powerful. That was what the Falcons said about this Tyler Algier guy is he's extremely powerful. Well, Zamir White fits every single one of those things. And he's not some guy that just came out of nowhere. He was the highest. I mean, I just feel like in the 5th and 6th round, a lot of those guys don't make your roster long-term. Why wouldn't you take a chance? Because he has the ability. He has shown in the past just the God-given ability to be an absolute freak. And I don't feel good about him being in Las Vegas because that is an absolutely loaded backfield. And I think it's going to be very difficult to get carries there. So I hope for the best for him. But, hey, listen, Nick Chubb went to a loaded backfield, and he came out the best running back of the group. So anything's possible.
One quick thing, and then we'll move on. It's actually very notable. The Raiders did not pick up on the 5th-year option on Josh Jacobs. That doesn't mean that they won't re-sign the guy. It doesn't mean they want to move on. It could simply mean they don't want to pay top rate for him for 1 year. So that is something to pick up on, and it is to be noted with Josh
Kenyon Drake.
And Kenyon Drake. So, I mean, there's 2 right there. They declined Jacobs' option. So, maybe that is a pathway to the opportunity for Zamir White. But I think the big thing with White is, he's a powerful back. I mean, you saw Georgia use him a lot in the second half of games to, I mean, his physical running ability, his strong, his strength, his physical running ability, he's not afraid to lower the shoulder, not to mention that quick one-cut ability coming out of the backfield. I mean, that dude's dangerous. That dude's going to play, hopefully for a long time in the NFL. And I could see him carving out a role in special teams in year 1, even if he's not getting the carries in the backfield. So,
and faster than James Cook.
That was shocking. I thought James Cook was going to run a higher 40 time than he did. So, but I mean, speaking of James Cook, what better situation could he go into in Buffalo? I mean, that offense is going to be dangerous.
Oh, and they have, I believe his name is Singletary, or I think that's his name, the running back that they have there. There's plenty of carries available in Buffalo. I think that they drafted him with the purpose of using him, and I think that's a great fit for him.
Going to be an absolutely awesome fit to watch. I mean, that offense is going to be dangerous. I'm excited to see all 15 NFL guys and how they do this year. But to wrap up the show as we approach the final, a little under 20 minutes to go, thank you all for being with us today. Rudes, Colonel Sanders, Robert, the guys I see in the comments, thank you all for joining us. We are not done yet. Now, we're going to transition from NFL back to college. And I got a little rant prepared for y'all today, and I'm going to converse with Dan on this one, because this is a little something that got me a little heated. I had to let some things out on Twitter last night when I saw it, and it's regarding NIL. And as you can see by the title on YouTube, and most likely will be the same on the podcast, is NIL is killing college football. Now, I know that is going to be a controversial statement, so let me go ahead and get out in front of this. I am 100% in support of college athletes being able to profit off simple things like name, image, and likeness. 100% agree with it. Needs to be done. Huge step forward. What I am not for, and where I draw the line, is an NBA free agency version of college football. I do not want to see free agency come into college football, and that's just the line that we're treading towards. That is the trend. You look at the transfer portal and what it should have been, it should be nowhere near as active as it is today. Yes, you're going to have guys moving around all the time. I get that. They're going to want to go wherever's best to them, wherever they get the most playing time. But it should not be free roam. You should not be able to say, okay, this coach won't play me. I didn't get 80 receptions in 1 year. I'm going to go over here. Not to mention, a coach should not be hitting you up in your DMs or through anyone in your inner circle and saying, hey, come over to me. I got $3 million to give you. No, absolutely not. I don't care who it is. That should not be happening. And that's exactly what is happening in front of our eyes. News broke Saturday that Pittsburgh wide receiver, Jordan Addison, for those that don't know, for those that didn't watch much outside of Georgia this past year, Jordan Addison is one of the best receivers in college football, if not the best. Won the Blitnikoff Award, annually awarded to best, the quote-unquote best receiver in college football, had 1,593 yards and 17 touchdowns on 100 receptions as a sophomore. Let that sink in. He almost had half of that his freshman year. It is one of the most ridiculous jumps I've seen from a young receiver in 1 year. Absolutely ridiculous. Now this guy wants to leave. Now, apparently, he is in the transfer portal, and right now it is widely regarded that he is going to USC, of all people. What's significant about that is obviously, this isn't the first time that USC has gotten a transfer from some school. I mean, we're talking about the same head coach, Lincoln Riley, who basically straight up, as he walked out the door, raided Oklahoma's roster. Took Caleb Williams with him. I mean, basically that whole receiving corps entered the portal. Jaden Hazelwood, he's at Arkansas. I mean, most of those guys are not on that team anymore. I mean, absolutely. Anyone that Lincoln Riley felt was valuable went with him to USC and that staff. I mean, you had OU sending out hints on Twitter that they may be coming after the guy. And now we're getting a second tampering accusation. This time it's with the Pittsburgh wide receiver. So that begs the question. I mean, to me, okay, I understand it. If you're not getting used like you thought you should, or if you're not getting the the NFL recognition that you thought you should be, fine, go ahead, transfer. But we're talking about the Blitnikoff Award winner leaving Pittsburgh to go to USC because reports are saying, I don't want to butcher the guy's name, Carlo Veltri of Sports Illustrated reported on Twitter that Addison is rumored to receive over $3 million if he transfers to USC. Let that sink in. $3 million. Fun fact, that is more money than George Pickens is going to make as a second-round selection for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is going to be a compensation package on par, quote-unquote, on par with Kenny Pickett. First-round quarterback to the Pittsburgh Steelers, the number 20 overall pick. That is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You're telling me you can transfer from a school in college to another school in college and make just as much money as a second and first-round draft pick? Absolutely ridiculous. That is not what college football is. That is not what the transfer portal should be. That is not what NIL should be. And what makes it even more ridiculous is everyone looks at it and says, hey, NIL and the transfer portal, they're here to level out the playing field. We're going to make sure that Georgia and Alabama, and Ohio State and Clemson, the same four teams at the top everyone complains about every year, is not the only four teams at the top. Let's sprinkle in some USC, let's sprinkle in some Texas, let's sprinkle in everyone else. Let's get the guys stuck in the middle to the top. Yes, that is kind of happening. Yes, it is leveling the playing field, but it's not for everybody. We're leveling the playing field for the top of the sport. The Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the top 10, Notre Dame, and all the fallen blue bloods. I mean, Nebraska, you're breathing some life back into Nebraska, whether or not you like it. Texas, they're getting some life back into them after falling, after competing for national championships in the early 2000s. They have a chance because of NIL and the transfer portal. But what about the ones in the middle? What about the people below them? What about the University of Pittsburgh, Dan? What are we doing? How is this helping them at all? The talent deficit is not helping. I mean, it's just expanding.
It's not helping a program like Pittsburgh. And for all those people who say, well, coach can leave whenever they want, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Lincoln Riley leaves USC. What does Oklahoma to go to USC? What does Oklahoma get? Oklahoma gets bought out of the contract. I don't know what it was, like $15 million or whatever the case may be. Oklahoma gets paid, right? Pittsburgh develops this young man to be the best wide receiver in college football, and he leaves. What do they get? Do they get draft picks? No, because that's not a real thing. Do they get compensation? Does USC pay them money for? No, they don't get dick. They don't get anything. They get handed nothing. And NIL was not created to be a pay for play. It's name, image, likeness. You had the ability to make money on your name. It was never intended to be a pay for play, meaning, hey, come play for me. I'll give you $5 million. That's not name, image, likeness. That's not what that is. It's just, and the NCAA doesn't have any power. They're a governing body. They're not a legal anything. They don't have any, there's no legal recourse they have. There's no power. I mean, they could, for all intents and purposes, they could say, hey, listen, this kid's not eligible to play in a school, and say, F you, he's playing. And there's not really anything that NCAA can do unless, I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And what's happening is gross and disgusting. And to your point, it's not what it was intended to be. And, you were talking about narrowing the gap or, leveling the playing field. And hell no, it's not going to do that. The rich are going to get richer because all the schools that have money, they have money for a reason. All the teams that want to win in football, they are going to win by any cost. And I will say the one thing that is interesting to me is all of these boosters are just handing over cash for these kids, right? What about when the kid sucks? Because that's what we haven't necessarily seen. I mean, the kid down in Miami got paid $3 million to be the quarterback. He wasn't that damn good. There's that quarterback going to Tennessee that's getting the bag, right? What if he doesn't win? So my question would be, what then? Like, listen, you don't get rich by just giving money away. Rich people have money for a reason because they invest it wisely, or they just, I mean, there's a lot of different ways guys have money, but rich people don't stay rich by giving shit away. So at some point, if they don't see results, that money's going to dry up. So I think, although it's extremely bad right now, I mean, USC money ain't going to really dry up. They have a lot of it, but Caleb Williams is not going to be a failure. That kid, Addison, is not going to be a failure. But at some point, these boosters are going to get pissed off that they're dropping $3, $4, $5 million on these kids and they're not producing. So we hadn't seen that yet.
And it's really crazy. It's starting to affect the game, and everyone's going to, I'm using, hey, maybe I am using hyperbole. Using the word killing college football, yes, that is a little bit of hyperbole, but you're already seeing it in action. It is right in front of your eyes, and whether or not you like it, it is happening. Go look at college basketball. Look no further than in the last calendar year, the last 2 calendar years. Look at the great coaches you've lost already. And I don't know. These guys, heck, Coach K retired because it's about time. Coach Williams retired because it's about time. Jay Wright, when we talk about coaches, good coaches leaving the sport, Jay Wright straight up said, goodbye, I'm gone. Shut the door on his career. Dude is what? I'm thinking he's about in his 50s, 60s, maybe at the most 60s. Dude just said, all right, Villanova, I'm done. And the last 2 calendar years, I mean, that's right at the introduction of NLI and the transfer portal. It's right in line. It's when all of this went crazy and it's blown up out of proportion. You saw Matt Luke, your very own offensive line coach at the University of Georgia, step away from coaching to go spend more time with family. The coaching life is not what it used to. You're now having to recruit not only the kids out of high school, but you're also having to recruit the kids on your roster. That's insane. An insane workload. And yes, I know those guys get paid a pretty penny to do what they do. And I'm by no means creating any excuses for those guys. But it is a very toxic, to me, from an outside looking in, it is very toxic. A very toxic situation you're living in. I mean, we got Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Pitt, calling Lincoln Riley to tell him, hey, I think you've tampered with my guy. Dan, I would love to hear that conversation. I don't know how that conversation went, but that phone call must have been juicy.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know Pat Narduzzi that well. I don't know that much about him, but I do know that to be a head coach in college football, you got to have some alpha to you. So I can only imagine that conversation wasn't very cordial. I'm actually surprised that Lincoln Riley took the phone call, to be completely honest with you, because Lincoln Riley just don't give a shit. He's trying to win. So I don't, I don't know. The most frustrating thing, to your point, Harrison, is this has created a very bad taste. And I know that if you say that you're labeled as, well, you just don't want the kids to have anything, that's not true at all. Name, image, likeness, NIL. Name, image, likeness. Go sell your jersey. Go sign autographs. Go, do like Brock Bowers. And, your traffic report is brought to you by blah, blah, blah. I'm Brock Bowers on 680 The Fan, right? He's making money off of his name, image, and likeness. And I'm not naive to think that Georgia doesn't pay people to come there. I'm not stupid. I get it. Like, I'm sure that people have been incentivized to come to Georgia over the years. I'm not dumb. But to my knowledge, with this NIL stuff, they haven't gone out and just gave somebody a bag. And a lot of these other programs are. But you could also look at it from the perspective as the Georgia and Alabama don't necessarily have to do that because they have a lot going for them. To come to USC right now, and I've already told you how I feel about USC. USC is a sleeping giant, and they have an opportunity. I mean, when they had that run going on with Pete Carroll, that I didn't ever think that dynasty was ever going to come to an end. I thought they were. I mean, they had it going for a minute, but yeah, they're very, very
and it was
dangerous.
Funny like this that ended that dynasty.
Yeah,
the whole Reggie Bush fiasco.
100%. They've never shied away from paying people, but if I'm Reggie Bush, I'm like, I want my damn Heisman back. This is bullshit. Yeah, imagine what Reggie Bush would have gotten paid if it was above board. Holy crap. He might have got $10 million a year and probably deserved every penny of it. But yeah, I don't know how to solve this, Harrison. And I think that's also the frustration that you feel as well. And I don't want to speak for you, but I could hear it in your voice is that, a lot of people say that, we're just, give me my NCAA back where we just, they make these kids do whatever we want to. And, there's indentured servitude and blah, blah, blah. Come on, man, get the hell out of here. If you're a Division I athlete at one of these major schools, you have a great life. Okay. And then have opportunity, name, image, likeness, go make money, work for it, do all that stuff. But it's just so frustrating when it's not pay for play. And these guys are overtly doing it, and nobody's going to step in to do anything. And, to your point, Mike Emmert stepping down. He might as well step down. He ain't done shit since he's been there. Okay? He stepped up, or he allowed this to happen, didn't put any foresight or any guidelines or anything. But, I think it was Jay Billis was on, and you have to understand, Jay Billis is a great sports broadcaster, but Jay Billis is also an attorney. And Jay Billis is extremely smart. And he had a successful law practice. He said that the reason the NCAA hasn't done anything is because they have cases lined up where they're going to lose every last one of them. If they do anything to step in the way of any of they don't want to say no to anything because they know they're going to go to court and lose. And that's why the NCAA is MIA on all this stuff is they know that if they try to go to court, they're going to lose. And it's just, I don't know how to fix it.
Well, to your point, I mean, Mark Emmert is stepping down. And I should have mentioned that with the coaches that are leaving the game. Even the NCAA president wants nothing to do with this. And he's the one responsible.
It's his fault.
Yes, it is his fault. He rolled it out with the rest of the NCAA administration and gave no guidelines. It's like saying, hey, it's like taking the kid to the beach, or to a pool at 4 years old and saying, hey, here's the pool, there's the deep end, do whatever you want. You're going to go let the kid drown? You're just going to go let him drown? I mean, no rules or regulations, no guidelines, no nothing whatsoever. You're just giving them a massive playground and giving them whatever they want to do. And that's what it is. It is, the Power 5 conferences as a whole. And really, you could say it's the, the schools at the top that run the sport. I don't doubt it. I mean, shoot, who's going to argue with Nick Saban? Who's going to have the respect? Mark Emmert, some guy that, I mean, did he even play sports growing up? Did he even play a college sport? Where's his rings? Nick Saban will come up to you with, 5 rings on each finger, demand your respect. But, I mean, he already fired his warning shot, Dan. We saw it. I think we talked about it not too long ago. Nick Saban says, hey, if you want to pay for play, I'll pay to play. I'll pay to play just as well as anybody.
He's not wrong. And those Alabama people, they want to win more than anything else. I mean, hell, they'll shoot their neighbor if they lose a football game. I mean, what's a little cash? I do think that would be an issue with Georgia. I know Georgia has a lot of deep pockets. They have money put aside. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'd be interested to hear what our listeners have to say, but I don't see Georgia. I just have a hard time picturing them anteing up money like that. I know Nick Saban knows his fan base, and he knows that if Nick Saban went to a press conference tomorrow afternoon and said, "Hey, listen, I need $38 million in my office by Friday,"
oh God,
on a Tuesday, there would be $39 million there. Okay, if Kirby Smart walked into a press conference tomorrow and said, "I need $38 million by Friday," there might be a long list of shit on his desk. Like, well, where's this money going? What is it going to go? I don't feel like our fan bases are exactly, or our alumni are exactly the same. I think we have money, but they seem to be a lot more fiscally responsible than some of those folks down in Alabama. Could be wrong.
You look at just like from everything we've heard and learned over the years, I mean, how meticulous and how advanced Georgia is at just like scouting these players, and they're not more advanced than Alabama, no way. They're probably on par, if not a little below Alabama at this whole evaluation thing with players at high school. Georgia doesn't take too many risks these days in recruiting. That when they take you, they know. I mean, they know where you're at and where you could be. I mean, there's not a lot of risk anymore in the way Georgia does a lot of these, recruits a lot of these players. They're taking a lot of really high value guys, and that are known prospects. So, like Dan says, I don't see Georgia going out here on the grand scale in front of everybody and saying, "Hey, here's $3 million, here's $8 million. Heck, Arch Manning, here's $10 million. Come to Georgia." I don't see it. I don't think Georgia's that desperate for success. And I think that comes down to it. Not saying that Georgia doesn't want to win. Not saying that Kirby Smart doesn't want to repeat. But I mean, he's already won a championship going off the old ways of, hey, if he is doing anything, he's not doing it in plain sight. He's just following the rules for all we know.
You mentioned Arch Manning. Arch Manning is going to be able to cash in on his name, image, and likeness like no other person in college football. I don't care about Caleb Williams or any of those other guys. They may be better. They may be more talented than Arch, okay? But his name alone, man doesn't even have to work for it. It's just going to come to him. But I don't see him as the type of guy, and I could be completely wrong, but I don't see Arch as the type of guy that's going to go to the biggest deal. I don't think he gives two shits about that. He understands that his future is in the NFL, and that's where he's going to make his money, and he is going to be the face. Like, the one thing I haven't said out loud, but I've always considered was being this young, going out there searching for the bag, does that stain your name and stain your perception when you're going to get, because we haven't seen any of these guys get drafted yet, right? I mean, yeah, some of these guys have some little deals or whatever, but these guys who are getting these big bags, we haven't seen any of those guys get drafted yet. I'll be interested.
Take a snap.
Right, but I'll be interested to see how the NFL handles that. Like, this guy, all he cares about is the money, and I don't know. Like, there's just so many unanswered questions, and I don't think Arch gives two shits about, who's got the bigger, better deal. I think Arch wants to come in for 3 years, develop, win national championships, win a Heisman Trophy, go to the NFL, and be the next Peyton Manning. That's what I think.
And I think for me, looking at it, the big NIL deal for Georgia, it has nothing to do with NIL. It's hey, let me throw some digits at you. Our first round draft picks alone made over $300 million. I think it was just off of combined, or maybe it's all 15. I think it was over $300 million is the combined earnings of those guys this year of that draft class. That's absolutely ridiculous. Jordan Davis is going to get paid like he's never been paid before. I mean, these guys are set for life, and it's because, Georgia helped them get to that next level. So I think, like most people are saying in the comments, Rude says here, I don't think Georgia is willing to be as loose with the purse. Yeah, I mean, I think me and Dan both agree with that. I just can't see Georgia being that, just flaunting their money all over to these recruits. I mean, really, with how Georgia recruits these kids, I don't think they don't want guys that are all about the money. They want guys that want to play at the University of Georgia, and they want guys that are, just as talented as the guys that have come before them. So I don't see that being as a big deal. But, when we're talking about Georgia being at the top of the mountain of college football right now, as Kirby Smart says, it's harder to stay at the top. The climb to the top is not as hard as staying at the top. When you see, these guys like USC, Texas, some of these guys that have kind of fallen off the mountain, these teams have fallen off the mountain, once they start catching back up, what are you going to do? Is Georgia going to adapt, or are they going to fall down the mountain? So, I mean, that's the predicament everyone's in. And Mark Emmert, if you're listening, I don't think you are, but if you're listening, good job, dude, because you just put, this whole thing in a bigger mess than you found it. Talk about, you want to leave the place better than you found it? Heck no. This place is worse than he found it.
He is the epitome of weak leadership. Weak leadership. And I have to get a parting shot out. So Texas is back with 0 draft picks. So, hey, if it does come down between Georgia and Texas for Arch Manning, which a lot of people believe that's 100% the case, Georgia has the bump on the chest, the whiteboard moment where they can say, hey, these are our guys that got drafted, and these are their guys that got drafted.
And here's something more ridiculous that I saw on Twitter. Apparently, Texas has not had an offensive player drafted in the first round since Vince Young in 2005.
That's got to be made up.
That's completely true. They have not had a offensive player go first round since 2005, and it was Vince Young. Absolutely insane. I'm trying to think. Georgia's last first round was one of the tackles, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, there's a little bit to counter there, counter recruit each other. Georgia's absolutely slashed these narratives, and it's been fun to watch. But guys, that's gonna wrap it up for episode 40 of the Dawg Talk Podcast. That was Dan Kiley. Let me go ahead and let's get the thing back under. The little banner under us to get y'all to make sure you find us wherever you can. You can follow Dan Kiley on Twitter at DanKiley3. You can follow me on Twitter at TopDog_blogs. Guys, if you're listening on podcast the day after, guys, if you want to get this, fresh, hot, and when it's out and live, not to mention, guys, we got full face cans coming up here over on YouTube. It is in the description below on the podcast. I've also linked the description for our podcasting platforms. I think it was Spotify and iTunes that I put up there in the description for both YouTube and the podcast that you're listening to now. If you're listening a day late, guys, make sure to like, subscribe, rate it 5 stars, leave a review. If you leave us a 5-star review with your name, we may reach out to you and get you on for a little segment, to a little Q&A in the future. I've got to discuss with Dan Kiley some content ideas. But guys, that's Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. We'll see you next week, same time and place.